Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
Hey, this is Tyler Jones, and you're listening to the Element Podcast.
It wasn't that long, though, was it?
No,
I thought it was
terrible.
like 25 seconds or
No, it's
something.
just more than normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, you're listening to KC Smith right here. He's talking. He's sitting on my couch, dusting it up, but it's okay. It's okay. We both have dirty couches now. What's been going on, dude? I know you've been sweating it out.
Yeah, actually today wasn't as bad. It was hotter temperature-wise, but we had breeze all day, which made a huge difference. I was cut man, so I spent all my time on the ground today.
Cool.
Sawdusting it up. That's way
further from the sun.
Yeah, and I can kind of find shade when I do that too.
Ooh.
And yeah, it's not too bad. We've starting earlier, so we finish earlier, which is good and bad because I was lethargic this morning at work.
Yeah.
I guess that extra hour makes a difference.
Yeah.
And normally I get up in the mornings and work out and I guess get my body started. And when we start at 7, I don't have time to do that or the want to do that. So I have to get my body started at work. Not near as much fun.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
No.
Dude, my body's been slow to react this week, too. I wonder if it's something in the air.
I think it's that. I've had a sore throat for going on
me too.
2 weeks right now.
Not 2 weeks, but yeah.
It's got to be allergies that are getting us, man.
Yeah.
Faux show.
Making you feel all bloated in the morning.
I tell you what, these people in this neighborhood that I'm building the house in, they mow every day. Oh. Every day. So there's always dust and crap floating around in the air, and it's just allergy city over there. But I did see something cool today, though. I didn't see the birthing event, but I saw a baby fawn getting licked up. Like, mama just had it. So you can mark it down. 200 days previous of today is when that doe was bred. You know where that puts it? Second week in November.
Mid-November.
How about that?
Yeah.
You know, we always had this theory about, the trickle rut, and still she could fall into that trickle. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that the baby that I saw today was bred,
It's like right where everybody else
in where it's supposed to
does.
be. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's interesting for sure. And then I've got, I guess the majority of them, that is where it happens. But I do have trail camera footage from last October of 4 deer walking by, video, and 2 does and 2 yearlings. One of them, the 2 does are gray, like they got their winter coat coming in. One of the fawns is gray, and the other one is red and spotted up like crazy.
Yeah.
And I mean, they just had to have been born a month apart at least, I would think,
Sure.
But, that is very interesting, man. You wonder if, that's a mature doe.
Yeah.
That's kind of more, in the cycle, or whatever.
I don't know. It's a good question. I also kind of wonder if, as our buck-to-doe ratio reaches a more healthy, herd dynamic, in our area, Texas, if the trick or rut will be less, because it could possibly be the fact that, it used to be 1 buck to 10 does when everybody's just smoking everything with horns on its head. And you just didn't have enough bucks to get the does bred. But now you got I think at least you have a more even buck to doe ratio. So maybe you're getting more does bred on their first cycle in the rut. I don't know.
Could be for sure. I don't know. It's really interesting. I guess it's time to get out and call some coyotes.
Yeah, I guess.
Last year we got video of a coyote with a fawn head in its mouth. We need to post that. We hadn't even showed anybody that.
I know it.
We need to figure out some way to put that into a video.
Dog. It's also a coyote that we almost shot, but he snuck up on us. So I don't know if it's the exact same one, but that video was taken not 200 yards from where that coyote snuck in on us.
Yeah.
That kind of stinks.
Yeah, it does, man, for sure. But it's all right. That deer probably would have gotten killed last year because there was 5 million people in there.
That's right.
there was guys that I think that they have a lease agreement on that public property there. They have Jimmy hunts the creek and Johnny hunts the mid creek.
And Bobby's further down the creek, and we all just go in. And I'm pretty sure they went in with weed eaters and cleared them a path down to their stand. I don't know, man. It was like a beaten path down there. That's pretty crazy. We
also put out a trail camera web in kind of that area. Yeah, I mean, pretty much that area. Yeah. But it was it's a big area, so it was probably a almost 2 mile web, of trail cameras. And we got all the cameras stolen. There was 4 or 5 of them.
We were so excited about that spot. Never went over there once all season long.
No, did not. Did not. So, anyways. Well, we've got a guest today that is legit, man.
Yeah.
Dude's been hunting all over the place, hunting for a long time. He's been apparently writing for a long time for outdoor publications. And so we're gonna talk to him here in a little bit. Patrick Meitin. Kind of a difficult name to say.
It is a little bit. Well, if it was spelled phonetically, it wouldn't be, but it looks a little bit like French or something. I don't know. But yeah, pretty cool dude.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. So anyway, I went to the archery shop today.
Did you really?
I did. Yep. And
Richard tuned you up?
No, not Richard. No, I didn't go there.
Where'd you go? Go to Canton?
Yep. And so I went down there, and man, they've done some renovations. It looks good in there. I hadn't been there in several years.
Yeah.
And they got a lot of gear, got lots of bows and stuff. They got it going on, man. It looks good.
Shoot a Tri-X?
No, I didn't, man. I don't know. I just feel weird in them bow shops, and some of them dudes, I know a lot of them think highly of themselves. And the guy I had been talking to and everything, he was real nice. But
yeah.
I just went in there to get my bumpers replaced that I had lost.
Yeah.
Tired of not shooting in the morning, so. And then I looked at some of the Easton FMJs, 5 millimeters, and just kind of tooled around a little bit there. Looked at stabilizers, which some of those stabilizers are absolutely outrageously priced.
I think I could get some PVC and make a stabilizer.
Dude.
That's crazy, the fact that some of them cost $140, $150.
No, try $250.
No
and
way.
This is, dude,
Ain't
and these
no
products
way.
are not overpriced. I saw products in there from Hawk.
Yeah.
That are what they are on the internet.
Yeah.
And this dang stabilizer is $250.
I'm sorry. I know you're supposed to put good components on your bow, but
ain't no way.
There's a line that you have to draw.
That's
sometime.
a quarter of a new bow.
You don't even need one on a Tri-X. Some people say.
Yeah.
And you can shoot fine from a tree stand without one. Dudes just want to spend money on their stuff, man.
If they got it, I guess. Whatever. But yeah, anyway, I looked around at that stuff, looked at some stands. They carry Millennium.
Yeah.
And so I was like, hey, y'all have the micro, whatever, that little 8.5 pound stand. I wanted to see if my big old foot would fit on that platform, and they didn't actually carry that one. And so he was like, yeah, whoever the owner is, he was
Brian?
like, yeah, he was like, Brian goes to the shows, and if he doesn't think, he was kind of hinting at that if he doesn't think it's a good product, he's not going to sell it. But I also kind of know that, it's one of those things also if he doesn't think it's going to sell. And there ain't many people in that area probably hunting public land. They're, setting their tree stand up, and they don't want to sit in that 8 pound tiny little, thing.
Sure.
So anyway, I figured, kind of take that with a grain of salt, and I still would like to see it before I buy it, if I do. But they had some Muddy Vantage in there.
The new ones?
They had 2. No, the old ones.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
For sale?
Yeah, they got 2. And I was like, man, I like that. I like that stand. I got a few of them, and good stand. But I like how it comes real narrow at the tree base where you're not going to be standing anyway. You're losing weight by doing that, And so anyway, he was like, yeah. I said, they don't sell those or make those anymore, do they? They're out of production. He was like, well, I don't know. Let me look. And so we looked, and out of production, they were pretty much out of them. They had 2 more left, and that was it. So maybe one of the few places you can get them where they're still new in the box. So I mean, they weren't in the box. I guess they were hanging up, but they were pretty much new. So anyway, or they looked at it new. I mean, they might not be. They might be used, but anyway, yeah. So I just kind of looked around there for a while.
Did you go with the traditional black on your bump stops, or
he's like, you want to stay with black? And I was like, yeah. I mean, what am I going to put some neons on there?
Put some yellow on there.
The only thing on my bow that's cool.
I've got blue ones on mine.
Do you?
Yeah, that's before I learned that blue is the one color that deer could see really well. So I put blue ones on there.
It's good, man. Mm-hmm. That may be why Scar jumped the string. He saw that blue moving.
Damn it, man.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
You figured it out.
Didn't Chuck Adams used to hunt in blue jeans?
I think so. You can take everything with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are we even doing trying to get information here?
I don't know.
I don't either. Let's let Patrick do that, maybe.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get him on the phone. What do you think?
Sounds good.
All right, so on the phone right now we have Patrick Meitin. He's an outdoor writer and an editor for several publications. Patrick, it is approaching 100 degrees here in Texas. How's the weather there in Idaho?
It's a balmy 75.
Oh my goodness!
Here, I live in northern Idaho, so we don't see 100 very often.
We were supposed to see it for about the next 5 days, and luckily they dropped the forecast a few degrees and got most of them under 100. So we're feeling good about it.
Our biggest problem this time of year is nonstop rain, but it's been pretty nice the last couple of weeks. Been getting out and doing some scouting. So
awesome, man. Yeah, we talked previously, and it seems like you've been pretty busy. But mostly what we want to talk today is whitetails, and I've got a question for you right off the bat, and it's a vague question, so you answer it however you want. Do you think, as hunters, that we can be snobs?
I certainly have. I've had concerns that the industry has kind of gone that way. I got into this industry about 30 years ago, and we all just used to hunt and have fun and kill a deer. Now you go to ATA or one of the big shows, and guys are showing off these pictures of these monster bucks. It makes you not even want to take your pictures out of your pocket, So I do see that, it has gotten a little elitist, It's the
Sure.
money, the big leases, I got the better lease than you do kind of deal, and some of the guys that have to hunt public land or mediocre states in general, I might feel kind of left out, maybe,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just I've read several of your articles, and not to blow smoke at you or anything, but I think you're a really great writer, and I share similar humor, I feel like, with you. And one of them kind of talked about the how every one of us thinks our deer are the hardest deer in the woods to hunt, So,
hey, that's for sure, man. My deer are twice as spooky and twice as smart as yours, no doubt.
that's the truth. You hear it in every media, man. It seems like everybody wants to validate who they are, and
well, what I think is funny about that is you read these articles, and most of the so-called whitetail experts live in the Midwest, of course, because they kill bigger deer than we do, so they're experts.
Yep.
They'll tell you how hard their deer are to hunt. And they're obviously not that hard when you're killing a 160, 170 every single year, no fail. So
right.
I find that kind of humorous. But
Oh, yeah. So, on that note, I kind of wanted to ask you, you've got a pretty extensive amount of whitetail hunting experience and industry experience as well. And I wanted to kind of ask you, how would you define how and why hunting the Midwest is different than anywhere else?
Well, I hunt the Midwest as often as possible because that's the best whitetail hunting in North America, obviously, maybe with the exception of like Alberta, Saskatchewan. But, in general, I'd say the Midwest, Iowa, and Illinois, Kansas, we all know the places. I mean, they're better managed, more private property. It's harder to get a place to hunt, harder to secure tags, especially for non-residents. So, and they've got superior genetics, superior habitat, superior game management, less hunting pressure. I mean, everything you need to grow big deer. And, that's what makes the Midwest great. They got groceries, they got the genetics.
Right. So, I guess on the flip side here, what are the commonalities that you see in places outside the Midwest? I know there's an extreme amount of difference.
I could use my backyard as a good example. I've been on a lot of really fun deep south hunts, for instance, where you have a lot of fun, but it's not the best deer hunting in the world. But the hunting pressure is more intense. Like where I live here in Idaho, you're hunting public land, open to everybody. You can have a really great stand that gets messed up by another hunter. You never know what's going on out there, in public land. So it just the game changes completely. The deer are different animals. The strategies have to change. You don't have the leisure. I read these stories about these guys who've hunted the same bucks for 5 years. I have never gotten the same buck 2 years in a row on a camera here.
Wow.
They disappear. Who knows where they go? They migrate out during the snow. The mountain lions get them. The wolves eat them. Whatever. It just. So when I read stories like that, I just kind of chuckle. That would be quite the luxury to hunt the same deer year after year after year.
Yeah. So, there in Northern Idaho, you've got wolves and lions, which are those are two things we don't have around here in East Texas. But one thing we do have are in many other states as well is the opportunity to feed deer with deer feeders, and therefore there's a deer feeder on like every 30 acres here with a couple hunters hunting that feeder. Do you think wolves and lions or people as predators make for a more aware deer herd overall?
Well, I used to joke about that because my first whitetail hunting experiences were when I went to college in Texas. I went to college at Texas Tech, and before then I'd hunted mule deer and cows whitetail and elk and stuff like that, pronghorn, and so the sitting in stands was foreign to me. But I used to say, hey, if you can kill a mature doe off of a feeder in Texas, you've got it down, because those deer, they've had a few deer shot around them. They know that corn's not there at a charity, so they can get pretty tough. But, on the other hand, where we have all the big predators, mountain lions in particular, I always feel if I can get the full draw and anchored on a buck, I feel like I've won. That's the hardest part of a deer encounter here, is just getting drawn on them. They're so spooky, and they remind me of those Texas corn feeder does. When I was in college, I was poor. I couldn't afford a deer lease, so I had to shirt tail onto other people's leases. And so they'd say, well, you can shoot all the does you want, because this management thing had started. So that was what I was limited to, is does. And it was challenging. It made me into a better bow hunter, really.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Those I've dealt with a few of those wary old block-headed feeder does throughout my days, and they always seem to always know to look up and what direction you're sitting over there. And it sounds like to me that you've spent some time, like you're saying, you're poor in college. I can identify with that for about what should have been 4 years, but more like 7 years of my life in college. And,
that's parallel to my experience.
Yeah, exactly. So do you feel that going down that path of maybe being more of a subsistence hunter, where you truly are meat hunting, as opposed to, there's a lot of people, and we're going to talk a lot about kind of how the industry trends are, in this podcast, but there's a lot, the big push nowadays is to justify your kill because you eat your meat, right? Like, that's kind of the cool thing to do. And it is cool to do, don't get me wrong. But do you feel that, like, being a true subsistence hunter, like somebody who's just after does and trying to find a way to truly put food on their table, does that make you a better hunter or give you a different type of edge?
Well, that reminds me of an old, I wish I could find it because I quote it fairly often and I can't remember where I saw it. But, like a lot of bow hunters my age, Fred Bear was my hero as a kid, and I read everything he wrote. And I can remember reading something by him a long time ago where he said, when you start bow hunting, shoot every legal animal that gets in front of you. Doesn't matter if it's a doe or a spike or a raccoon or whatever. He said, you need experience. If you shoot those does, you shoot those little bucks, you're going to get that experience. Where it seems like nowadays people are kind of shamed into you can't shoot the little buck.
Mm-hmm.
And does are just kind of, oh, yeah, that's for management only. That's not for recreation. And, a lot of people are just waiting on that big buck. Well, they've never even killed a nice buck, and they're waiting for the big buck, and they don't have any experience. So when the big buck does arrive under their stand, they freak out and miss it, so they have no experience. So I encourage beginning bow hunters, man, if you have an opportunity to shoot some does or spikes or whatever is allowed on your hunting area or your lease or whatever, man, go for it, man. It's good practice, and that's all I've eaten for the past 30 years is venison and elk and stuff like that. I depend on it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I killed an elk in 2016 and ate that for one straight year, and then I did not get to shoot one last year. And I can tell you, it is not as much of a good year if you don't have a freezer full of elk meat, because that's the best stuff there is. I wish we didn't have to drive so far to get it, but
or 4 or 5 deer.
That's kind of what I supplemented with. I actually just had a supper of whitetail meatballs, which is pretty tasty. It's become one of my wife and I's favorite. But so
we just made some Kansas deer meatloaf, the other night. So we ate a lot of that. So.
Yeah, those are tasty. The good old corn-fed deer. Those are where it's at. But earlier you brought up, I don't remember what word you used, but I guess allowed. Maybe you said you're allowed to shoot, does and spikes or what have you. And we live in a state that kind of has determined what we're allowed to shoot through antler restrictions, which I get the point. There's a lot of people, and the economy is partially based on shooting bigger deer in Texas, right? So there's a lot of people who want to shoot older, more mature bucks, and I get that. I tend to fall into that demographic. But at the same time, I feel like it really restricts the individual's ability to go in the woods, and if they, if it fits your fancy to go in there and shoot the first forky that you see and you have a good time, I don't know if I like the idea that the state tells you can't do that. You know what I mean? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. Really, pretty much on principle, I agree with that whole notion. But, the reality is we now live in a world where there's more people. When I was right out of high school, I got an elk tag every year in the Gila region in New Mexico. Now it takes years to draw those. So, there's just more people in the woods shooting more deer. I think you got to do something to manage the resource. And, I think making people a little more picky in general might make people safer because they're not shooting at stuff rattling in the bushes. But I hate to see that, especially with kids.
Yes.
You and me are going to hold out for a big buck because we've already been there and done that. But, I feel sorry for the kids is who I feel sorry for.
Yeah. Me too.
I've been in camps before where, a 12-year-old kid shoots a 100-inch buck, and everyone's giving him a hard time about killing a buck that would have grown up big someday. It's like, man, that's terrible to me. I hate seeing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, the trophy hunting mentality, I mean, I think there's a lot of states with antler restrictions. Mississippi does it now. I think Pennsylvania maybe. And I think it's just a reality of more people tapping into that resource. You got to do something to slow down the harvest because you've got places like the Northeast. I've got buddies that I've hunted with out there in New York and New Jersey. They'll shoot anything that moves. They act like they're going to starve to death if they don't get their deer. And there's a lot of people coming up from the city, hunting the Catskills and Adirondacks. So it's pretty hard on the resource.
For sure. Yeah, that's. I mean, I understand that for sure. It's you kind of understand that there's some biological principle in there too as well. But I don't know. In a place where we live, we've got a lot of deer here in this state, and so it's tough to see that sometimes. Because I know personally, I shot like a 9-inch wide, like little 1.5-year-old 6-point. It was my first buck, and I have never been more excited, from any harvest that I've ever had, So
yeah, I mean, my first deer with the rifle was a little fork horn. My first deer with the bow was a little 6-point. We all start somewhere.
Right.
But that's why I say bring up the kids. They've got to start somewhere.
Sure.
That's where the does come in nowadays.
Yep.
I mean, when I first started bow hunting, the funny thing is, you didn't have to choose a weapon in New Mexico when I was a kid. And so if you didn't get a deer during bow season, you could hunt during muzzleloader season. If you didn't get a deer, then you could hunt during rifle season. Well, rifle season, that was the big camps with all the family. And so even during bow season, everyone was real picky. Does were legal, but no one would shoot them. It was that mentality back in those days. And then, finally, I just decided I was going to be a bow hunter, and I started shooting does. And my buddies were making fun of me, but hey, I got more experience than they did right off the bat. So, I mean, by the time some of those guys were older than me, but 10 years later, I was way ahead of them as far as keeping my cool with big bucks under the tree and stuff like that.
Right.
And I think the whole game management thing, I mean, you really have to work with what you've got. I mean, one of the things that makes the Midwest outstanding, they maximize hunter opportunity by allowing people to bow hunt, which doesn't have as high a success rate. They hold off with the guns until after the rut, which I absolutely agree with. Living in a state where they pound them with rifles through the middle of the rut, it just it's lost potential to my mind. But that's part of the Midwest mystique, is that game management, that we're going to keep our bucks big because we're not going to pound them during the rut. We're going to, besides the genetics, the habitat,
Yeah. So, in an area where you've got natural predators like you do up there in Idaho, wolves and lions, bears, whatever it may be, what are some of the things you have to really focus on in those areas that allow you to be successful?
Well, I mean, I don't know that the predators are as big an issue as just having to hunt very big areas. I mean, I'm hunting whitetails here in elk country. So there are no feeding areas. There are no bedding areas. The whole world is feeding and bedding areas. So, the predators, I've had good spots go dead because some wolves moved in. I've had stands go dead because the lions start showing up on camera, but that's usually temporary. But, in the bigger picture, predators don't enter the picture. It's more of, it's topography, and we hunt scrapes here a lot during the rut, hunt apple trees early. And, but, you got to find that magnet that's going to draw deer from a much, much bigger area.
Right. Well, those naturally, I mean, obviously, probably at one point, are you talking crab apples? Or are you talking like actual?
There's a lot of feral fruit here, apples, pears, crab apples, stuff like that. And I guess, the Northwest is just, Washington apples is a big thing. It's just the climate here is conducive to fruit trees, so if some guy throws an apple core, off in the bushes, it might grow.
That's awesome.
That's not going to happen in New Mexico, without not enough water. So, we've got the apple tree areas tend to be closer to civilization, although you get lucky. I've got one apple tree that's out in the middle of nowhere. God only knows how it got there. A logger or rancher threw an apple out,
Wow. So you can focus on that as your food source, kind of, huh?
Yeah, so our season opens August 30th, so, we have an opportunity to shoot bucks in the rut here. So usually you're concentrating on food then. You're going to look around those apple trees, the pear trees. Not all of them are located where you can take advantage of them because of the wind, and then the farm areas, around garbanzo beans and field peas and stuff like that. But then, back in the big woods early, you can hunt springs and ponds are pretty decent. And but really during the rut's really where things really turn on. You're hunting scrapes mostly, and lots of cameras. I rent 25 or 30 cameras out here.
What are you looking for on those cameras? I mean, obviously you want to know there's a big buck in the area or whatever your target is, but what else are you looking for?
You've got topography like saddles or points or ridges that are going to naturally funnel game movement. So you kind of watch those to see if there's a couple big bucks in the area. Mostly you're just looking. I mean, we have a ton of country out here. We have a lot of deer, but there's not deer evenly distributed across the entire landscape. They're in pockets. So, you'd find a piece of habitat that looked fantastic, put a camera there, and, 2 months later you haven't gotten 2 or 3 deer on it. And, that's how you find the bigger bucks. And then during the rut, those funnels that's where the scrapes and the rubs appear.
Yeah.
Do a lot of backtracking in the snow from cameras. Got a lot of cameras I can check in the field. And backtrack big bucks, see where they're going, see where they're bedding, see where they're traveling, and find. I found some of my best major scrapes, the ones that appear year after year, just by doing a lot of back trailing.
Yeah. See, it's so interesting to me, that whole mountain whitetail hunting that you guys have up there. I just don't. I've never hunted anything like that, and I kind of understand what you're saying with the pockets of deer. It's kind of, we've tried to talk to a few guys about this, and it seems that everybody has the same consensus about that, and so it takes a lot of work and scouting to find those pockets.
Yeah, it's I call them honey holes. You have your little honey holes, that you find accidentally. Usually, it seems like if I'm helping someone trail a wounded deer, I find these awesome places because they head into these nasty spots, But there's a lot of hiking, And then you find them elk hunting too. You find last year's rub, stuff like that. But it's definitely different. I mean, I don't know how I'd put this, diplomatically. I used to think whitetail hunting was kind of silly. I mean, the whole obsession with it I thought was kind of silly, because when I lived in New Mexico, when I wanted to kill a big whitetail, I just went to Kansas or I went to Iowa or went to Illinois, and not until I started going to those places did I have any whitetail luck whatsoever. I was really jinxed hunting in Texas because I didn't have feeders. I was having to hunt the hard way. And so, when I went to Iowa and Kansas and Illinois and started shooting hoping young bucks on a regular basis, and then started holding out and shooting 160s on a semi-regular basis, I thought, well, this is easy. This is all you got to do. Just go to Iowa. That's the secret to whitetail hunting. So I always thought it was whitetail hunting was the obsession of whitetail hunting was kind of silly. Then I moved to Idaho, and I have them in my backyard, and now I totally get it. I mean, we have some 150s, 160s here, but they're rare. More, realistically, you're hunting 140, 145 bucks. But because of the big woods, because they're close to home, you get absolutely engrossed in it. I mean, it's year round,
We understand.
I now get it, I now understand the whitetail obsession.
That's cool. It's funny that you're talking about that because I like to go on deer drives this time of year around this area. There's a lot of back roads and stuff we can drive around, see different deer, feeding or whatever. You can kind of assess antler growth, and, most of them are deer you'll never get a chance to hunt, but at least you get to see whitetails. And I kind of have that obsession. And the other evening I was going on one of these drives with my wife, and I just was overwhelmed, and I looked to her and I said, I just love deer. And she laughed, of course, and then looked at me and said, I don't know if you've ever said anything that emotional to me about loving me, but you just saw a white-tailed doe in a pasture, and it caused you to say that. And so she was, jokingly concerned. She wasn't really concerned because she gets it, but, she may or may not get it, actually, but I'm trying to explain it to her at least. But, it just gets in you. I don't know. I guess it's a different experience for everyone. Some people, it might be going to, one of the big buck states in the Midwest, like Iowa or something, and seeing big deer and seeing the rut, how it's like supposed to happen. But then, I don't know, for me, it's just the versatility of a whitetail. How I can drive through a neighborhood and see, 20 does who have made a living eating, clover in people's backyards and eating from bird feeders. And then at the same time, I can drive way off in the middle of nowhere around here, and a deer that's 400 yards away from the road sees me barely start to slow down, and it's a white flag, and they're off in the bushes. It's just so cool how they just can adapt, and they're just such a interesting species. And I don't know if that's kind of what got you or what, but that's just wildlife in general. It's it reminds me of I don't remember where I read it. I think like Thomas McGuane or something, and he was talking about being at a party, and some woman says, what did the deer ever do to you? Nothing. I'm serious. What do you have to go and kill them for? He goes, I can't explain it, talking like this. Why should the deer die for you? Would you die for them? And he says, yes, if it came to that. And I thought, wow, that is... Yeah.
I really believe that's how most real hunters feel, Mm-hmm. We love what we kill. Some people don't understand that, but that's exactly how it is. Yeah, for sure. So, this might put you on the spot, but you said most real hunters. What's it take to be a real hunter? Well, I've had people tell me, oh, I hate hunters. I go, well, I hate to admit it, but sometimes I hate hunters too. People that I don't like aren't real hunters. The guys that go up and shoot up road signs and throw their beer cans out. And, they have a hunting license and they're hunting, but they're not hunters. You know?
Sure.
So, I think we can all kind of agree on what a real hunter is, the guy that gets out there and does it and actually cares about the animals and not just want to kill something to hear their gun go off. And, it's going to have bad eggs in all sports, but, I think we all get blamed for some of that bad behavior by guys with guns who happen to have a deer tag in their butt.
Yeah, for sure. And I hate, and it's I'm not going to say of my own doing, but it's of some of my, I guess, cohorts doing. We live in a pretty rural area, and for a long, long while, generations past, poaching was just something that you did. And it just makes my skin crawl when I hear like a news line or a story where someone just interchanges or uses poaching and hunter as synonyms, and it's just completely two different mindsets altogether.
We still have a lot of that up here. It's very rural, and there is a cornucopia mentality, kind of like Alaska, where people who have lived here for a long time just say, well, we don't need no stinking licenses, or we do what we want, And, some of these families, they're eating everything they shoot. But, I know of, I don't know them personally. I know of people who are spotlighting regularly and stuff like that around here, and they're not doing it to feed their family. They're doing it to brag about some big set of antlers, and that kind of stuff just makes me sick. I mean, you cheer for the game warden to catch them red-handed,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sure. I feel like
but you hear people bragging about stuff like that.
Oh.
I just set them straight. Don't even begin to talk about that stuff around me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shut up right now.
I don't know if I've ever told very many people this story, but I was spotlighting with a guy in college. It was a friend of a friend, and I was there with the friend who we were mutual with, and we're out, looking for hogs or whatever. We shot a couple hogs, and then this probably mid 140s class 10-point jumps up at like 60 yards. This dude cracks off a shot and misses it, and we left him in the pasture. We left him there, drove off, and he had to walk home. And I was, pretty close to calling the game warden, except it was one of those situations where, there's no dead animal, which I'm glad for, But it was just unfathomable to me that someone would care that much.
Well, why
to
would
shoot
you even want it?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
kind of like the guy who cheats at a 3D tournament to win a $5 trophy. It's like,
Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't get
Well,
it.
and then circling back to the whole trophy hunting thing, it's like, I'll shoot does to fill the freezer, but I mean, when it comes down to my big tag, the buck tag, I mean, I'm always going to try to kill the biggest buck, and people go, well, you're a trophy hunter. You go, yeah, technically, but I said, in my mind, like elk hunting here, if I just shot a elk, I'd be done in a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm always after the biggest bull I know about because it prolongs the fun.
Yeah.
Hunting that one bull, hunting that one big buck, especially whitetails, hunting that one big buck is it prolongs the fun.
Yeah.
You're passing up stuff that you never would have thought of if you didn't know this buck existed.
Mm-hmm.
And that really kind of ties into the whole trail camera thing too. 'Cause I know guys that think trail cameras are not ethical. It's like I have had seasons where I did not fill my buck tag because of trail cameras.
Yeah, exactly.
Passing up, trying to kill a particular buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the greatest management tool that ever came along for guys who want to prolong the fun,
Yeah, true. I did that last year. I passed up a 3-year-old whitetail that was a great deer, especially for public land in Texas, because partially that I knew there were bigger deer in the area, and I just kind of have this. I'm an experience hunter. That's what I like to call myself. Like I'm not a trophy hunter. I'm not a meat hunter. Like I'm after a certain experience in the woods. And I don't know if I can tell you what that is, but I know it when I feel it, and that wasn't the experience I was going for at that moment. I wanted to shoot an older, more mature buck. And it's like you're saying, because of trail cameras, that deer, he was like at 12 yards, just clueless of my existence. It's for all intents and purposes a chip shot, and I didn't shoot because of the trail camera. And, it's impossible to think.
Trail cameras, you would have shot that buck.
Oh,
yeah.
I guarantee it, especially on public land in Texas. Like it was a great deer. And to be honest, like I've wavered after that time because last year I didn't shoot a buck in Texas. And, after then I kind of wonder if I made the right choice or not, But at the end of the day, I know that
your heart was still beating.
That's it, man. I was excited for sure. But it was one of those things where if there's any chance that I walk up on an animal and I have any regret in my heart that I actually shot it, I don't ever want to experience that. And I knew that that's kind of where I was with that buck, and he just didn't quite fit the experience I wanted.
Right, right. Well, what I find when I travel, especially if someone's hosting you and they have expectations, for your entertainment, sometimes I end up shooting bucks on hunts when I'm traveling that I wouldn't shoot at home just because the host wants you to be happy, so you make him happy shooting something,
Mm-hmm.
If that even makes sense.
Yeah,
but,
I get that for sure.
Usually here, because I scout so hard, and of course the rut changes everything. I have bucks show up, but usually before the season starts, I have my number 1 buck, my number 2 buck. I mean, and it just focusing on just a handful of deer really makes it more fun for me. It's instead of just kind of randomly, I'm going to sit in the stand and see what happens. It's like you're playing chess with this one buck. Of course, he didn't know you're playing chess, but
sure, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where it almost allows you to get deeper and more intricate with your craft. You know, like instead of being in y'all's case, you know, August to whenever deer hunter, or in our case, October till January deer hunter, like it becomes a year-round passion because you can just envelop yourself so much more, you know, with trail camera setting and then, you know, prepping your stand locations, post-season scouting. You know, it just becomes more of a lifestyle, which I dig, man. I'm all in it, you know.
Well, you know, I know that targeting specific bucks has made me a much, much more careful, more aware hunter because, you know, you have individual stands that you know, because, you know, like say that remote apple tree, one of my favorite stands. If I had 10 stands like that, I'd kill a monster buck every year. But I have to be very, very, because that place is like gold, I have to be very, very careful with that stand. It has taught me more about getting in and out of stands without screwing things up. The first several years I tried to hunt there, I blew it out every year. I'd be done in the first 3 days. That place was burned. And now, you know, I've learned how to get in and out of stands more carefully. You're more careful about your scent. You don't even get near a stand unless the wind is perfect. You learn to watch the weather a little more closely. So it really makes you a better hunter, rather than just kind of randomly walking out, licking your finger. Okay, the wind's blowing out of the west. I'll just sit over here randomly, you know.
Yeah, sure. You know, around here, we kind of have a little bit of an overlap on target bucks. So we have a lot of small parcels, or there's a lot of guys hunting the public stuff like we do, and there's a lot of guys targeting specific bucks, and it gets pretty dang competitive. And it seems like you're kind of in a similar scenario where there's not a bunch of, you know, really big bucks around, and whenever there's one around, at least here, like it gets talked about. Is there kind of that competitive nature up there on the public land you're hunting, or are you all spread out?
To an extent. I mean, we've got so much land out here that's not as common as it would be. Like, I mean, I even hear guys in Iowa talking about, like, we're all hunting this, you know, 12 of us are hunting this one buck. But I know one year, that apple tree in particular, I had talked to the landowner probably too much, and then he told his son-in-law or something, and his son-in-law told someone, and then next thing I know, I'm being moved in on. And, you know, that was private land, but I mean, it's private land in that there's a deed involved, but he lets anyone who wants to hunt there, so it's not exclusive. So, you know, next thing I know, I have this guy moving in on top of me. He doesn't know what he's doing. He's hunting on the wrong wind. He set his stand in dumb places, and, you know, I complained to the landowner, and he's like, I don't want to get involved in this. So, you know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is I worked around that guy. I said, okay, how is this guy going to affect the hunting here? And I set up an alternative stand, and I ended up killing my number 2 buck, a real nice non-typical. So it kind of sort of worked to my advantage. But, you know, keeping an open mind and not getting stuck in a rut, I think, is really important when you're hunting public land. You got to have a plan B and C and D and be willing to change gears, you know.
Yeah.
Can't get stuck on, like, I have to hunt that apple tree. That's my apple tree. You know, I had to make another plan, and I made it work. I was very, very proud of that. Like, wow, I think I'm actually figuring this out, you know.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, if you're, for the person who's wanting to get into traveling around and hunting different environments where maybe they're not going to the Midwest, but they're going, you know, to public land parcels on some of these different tracks. And I know this is a really big question. There's a lot of different regions and areas and habitat types. But, you know, where do you start with that?
Got to do a lot of desktop scouting. I mean, I do it here. I mean, I can hunt. Washington is just a couple hours away. I can hunt here at home. I usually go to the Midwest at some point. And, I mean, I've hunted public land in Kansas and done all right. And you got to do a lot of work at home. You obviously, even if you live in Texas, you can't run to Kansas every weekend and scout. So you got to got to do a lot of research at home, talk to biologists on the telephone, look at aerial maps, just do your homework so when you get there, you hit the ground running instead of starting off cold. You already have an idea where you want to look and where you want to put stands. And it's pretty effective. I mean, maybe that's part of growing up hunting in the West where everything was just kind of run and gun anyways.
Mm-hmm.
But I can show up cold to a place in Kansas I've never seen before, except on the computer, and usually do all right. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's so there's a lot of resources now through the internet. The aerial sites are fantastic, but even just staring at maps has done me a lot of good. And
Yeah.
talking to biologists, and you know, sometimes talking to biologists, you're just getting a dose of reality. What might I find here? He might say, you know, if you see a Pope and Young, you better shoot it. Or you could say, oh, there's some 150s there, you know. Just doing your homework at home, every spare moment, you know, on the computer or on the phone, calling people. And I mean, I've made friends because I called some guy at the local sporting goods store, and we had a long conversation and became buddies because I went by and saw him when I got there, you know.
Right.
It's keep your ears to the ground, you know. That,
Yeah.
But, you know, hunting out of, I think we kind of get used to hunting our backyards and having all this years of intel, and then you leave that comfort zone to go travel somewhere. It's kind of foreign, but, you know, as an outfitter in the past, and I outfitted for 23 years, and having to move to new areas and stuff, you learn how to pick up, you know, new ground really quickly. So I think that's part of what helped me when I, you know, gone out to the Midwest and hunted new places.
Have you found that there's a certain distance that you seem to leave a lot of people behind at, or is it just very circumstantial?
Well, you know, like here it's very frustrating because New Mexico I could leave people behind. You backpack about 8 or 10 miles and there was nobody, because I used to hunt cows whitetail or coos whitetail a lot. I killed about 12 Pope and Young bucks and a couple Boone and Crockett's with my bow.
Wow.
I was obsessed with them for a while, but that's how I found good hunting. I backpacked. I got way back. But, you know, like here, the economy here is all 100% logging. And so there are no remote places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you've got to work around roads and four-wheeler trails and people.
Yeah.
But what I've found here, and I'm sure I believe this would work just about anywhere, you got to find places that not necessarily out walking people, but just finding places where it's so nasty thick people don't want to fight the brush.
Yeah.
And that's what I do a lot here. I mean, it's places where you have to push and crawl and fight to get in there, and then you get into the middle of it and find a little opening where you can shoot 20 yards and set up a stand. And, you know, the deer go to those places as little refuges, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the rifle guys won't hunt them because they want to shoot, you know, 200 or 300 yards.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
That's true. So, quick question. This is kind of off topic, but I need a good pair of brush pants. What are you wearing?
Oh, brush pants?
Yeah.
When I'm deer hunting, I'm not really wearing brush pants, but I do a lot of bird hunting.
Yeah.
Just the Wranglers, the regular old Wrangler faced, I don't even remember what they call them.
But they got the canvas on the front or whatever
Yeah,
kind of bird pants.
Well, it's like ballistic nylon or, you
Yeah.
know, ripstop nylon or something. I've got several pairs of those, and they fit well. And, I mean, I've had the Filson ones, but, man, they're expensive.
Yeah, they are. But they're
Plain Jane Wrangler ones have worked really well for me.
Yeah, for sure. So, do you know, we talked about, like, distance you can go in to get away from people, or, you know, like you just said, you know, just go to the nasty stuff. But do you feel like there's well, let me back up. We live in a world nowadays where, like, the map scouting thing and the digital maps is, like, kind of commonplace. Like, there's a lot of people utilizing that now,
Right.
where in the past, you know, GIS maps and stuff like that weren't as common. So I feel like people are catching on to the whole, like, you can look at maps and learn a lot of stuff before you even go to a parcel. So do you feel like there's a parcel size that, like, an out-of-stater automatically overlooks, or do you think that, like, there's a certain thing, like a niche there where you could be a guy who, like, I'm going to only go to, like, anything that's 160 or less, you know, because there's going to be less people hunting that because it's so small?
Well, I know that, on the biggest ones like some wildlife refuges we've hunted in Oklahoma, you definitely can outwalk your competition. You get a mile and a half or 2 miles, especially in early sweaty bow season, and you just left everyone behind because you got to leave the truck at 4 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those places are postage stamps, man. I mean, it's like not even a section.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, one place we used to call the timber claim was on the middle of 2 farm road intersections, and there was a patch of trees, man-made planted trees that it couldn't have been more than, I bet you it wasn't an acre. But deer funneled through that little patch of brush, So it was a place where you drive by and go, I'm not hunting there. That's ridiculous. There's nothing there. And every deer in that whole area funneled through there. So, it's small doesn't necessarily mean bad, especially if it looks so small that everyone else is kind of dismissing it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's another one of the things that I always say, too, is look for the ugly places. I killed a buck that was right behind the farmer's barn, and there's garbage everywhere. Old car fenders and cans. And I remember another place in South Dakota where the deer funneled between 2 patches of Russian olive trees, and it was literally the farmer's junkyard, the old combines and tires, and the deer just wove right through the middle of that stuff, and we put a pop-up blind right in the middle of it. Worked fine.
Yeah,
awesome.
That's cool. It makes for a memorable hunt, too. You can... It's nice to be able to call a deer the toilet bowl buck or something like that.
Right. Well, you could be right behind the state parks administration building. You could be behind the city dump. You could be right beside some big highway with a power line over your head crackling. It's just places where people are like, I'm not hunting there. That place is ugly.
Yeah.
Those are sometimes some good places.
Yeah, no kidding, man, no kidding.
And then the other thing I found very useful in a lot of places is a kayak. We hunted a place in Missouri, this old strip mines. I don't know if it was coal maybe, but it was old strip mines. And these strips were only, 50 or 100 yards across, but they were bottomless. Hundreds of feet deep, and they went for miles. If you had to walk around them and get in back of them, you would have had to do a lot of hiking. You get in a kayak and you're across in 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's getting more common too. People are figuring that sort of stuff out, but not everybody. So.
Just don't drop your metal stand on that trip because it's going to the bottom.
Yeah, some of those strips are. That was a cool place, and a buddy of mine turned me on to that. He lived there, and it was mining company owned land, but they allowed people to hunt there.
Cool.
That's cool.
You had to park in particular areas, and you had to walk in. You could just ride 4-wheelers all over it. And there were rules, big signs, don't do this, don't do this. But, they were kind enough to let the public hunt there. So it was a pretty cool spot.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I got a question for you. Do you think that the whole, the Midwest style of hunting whitetails is to have a food plot or some food source and hunt a deer on a bed-to-feed pattern on a pinch point in the rut or something like that and put a stand in a tree 13 to 20 feet high? Do you think that deer will ever reach a bell curve that we crest over to where it's more advantageous to actually hunt on the ground because deer are so used to looking at guys up in the tree?
If they're not getting any hunting pressure, no, I don't think they're ever going to get that smart. But I have hunted places. Right after Texas, the first extensive whitetail hunting I did was in the suburbs of Omaha, Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
And just one of those deals where a buddy of mine had a relative who had a friend kind of thing. And so we were hunting suburbia along some railroad tracks. We didn't have a lot of options, but we didn't know any better. And those deer, because everyone that had a patch of land hunted deer. Well, not everyone, but lots of people. There were stands in people's backyards. Mm-hmm. And suburban bucks get pretty smart in a hurry. And I swear, we used to joke, we need to make pit blinds, because those deer used to walk around looking up into the trees. I said, if we were in pit blinds, they would never see us because they're all looking up. But it definitely happens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But Midwest, Iowa, those deer just don't get the hunting pressure. I mean, that's why it's so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's the seasons are more controlled. The weapons are more controlled.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that we deal with here too, and I'm sure you do. And I'm all for hunter opportunity, so I'm not gonna just dog it. But we have a very liberal rifle season, where there's a lot of gun hunters, and there are some archery hunters. I'm one of those. But those deer, as soon as that gun season opens, man, they're on a new level. Especially on the private stuff.
Our gun season here is like a month and a half long.
Yeah, same here. Yeah, and I guess it's like
2 months.
2 months and a week. But yeah, we're in kind of the same boat. Where it's just like a really long time period for those deer to. I don't know. It's kind of crazy to watch their patterns change and see how much of a difference like that rifle pressure puts on the animals.
Well, that's certainly happening here, but that's why I say that. One thing you can count on rifle hunters is, maybe out here more than anywhere else, because everyone out here wants to be a long-range sniper. So, you ask a guy, how'd your deer season go? He doesn't tell you how big his buck was. He tells you how far away he shot it.
Yeah. So
the rifle hunters here tend to gravitate to the clear cuts, to the log roads where they can watch down. They want to see.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been very successful bow hunting during rifle season, general season, by just climbing into the thickest, nastiest places I can find, because the rifle hunters don't want to be in there. They can't see.
Right.
And it's amazing to me. I mean, I have a stand I can think of right off the top of my head. You sit in a stand, 300 yards away is a road, and I can hear four-wheelers going back and forth all evening when I sit in that stand, and deer are calmly walking beneath me.
Mm-hmm.
But, you have to fight brush to get in there.
Right,
yeah. I've considered cutting the trail so I could get in there more quietly, but then someone would find my trail and ruin my spot. But it's, I bet you could probably find those same situations where you live. Just find some nasty, swampy, thick places that people don't want to be, and that's where the deer are going to go.
Yeah, it's good advice. I've got basically kind of a lightning round here, and it doesn't have to be super fast, but several kind of detailed questions that I'd like to ask you when it comes to hunting, how you know it, whether that's there in Idaho or in some other experience that you've had. But in a low, we'll start off with this, in a low density area, low density herd number area, how do you approach calling?
It really depends on how truncated the rut is, really. I mean, you got places like in central Texas where they rut for 3 months, where I used to hunt in college, where you get places like up here in the north especially, where they have a very defined rut because they have to. Those fawns have to drop at a certain time or they aren't going to survive. Mm-hmm. So calling in low density areas can be relatively productive. I mean, obviously you're not going to call deer in every other call like, say, a prime South Texas ranch, but if you keep on trying, it's going to work, because those bucks in the low density area are looking for those does, and so you call, they're going to come to look. But overall, I'd say just as a safe bet, and I even start this way in the Midwest, although, that hardcore rattling and the grunting and buck roars or whatever, whatever that is, work in the Midwest, I always start with the subtler calls, the antler tickling, the doe bleats. And because if you have a meek buck, it doesn't mean he has small horns, he just doesn't like to fight. He may sneak in on you, but on the pressured areas and the areas where the dynamics are all screwed up, where the buck-to-doe ratios are all out of whack, that social calling can really, really work well for you. Mm-hmm.
I guess that's where calling a local biologist might help you out, knowing that going in. How high are you hanging your stands? You one of those guys like my buddy KC here that hangs them about 30 feet in the air and makes a jungle gym out of it, or...
It really depends on the terrain. I mean, I have stands because Idaho, I mean, you're hunting these mountainsides, and like say maybe you have a 50-year-old logging road that has turned into a game trail. It's a flat shelf, like almost a bench on the side of a mountain. And in order to get downwind of that, you have to go downhill. The tree is growing, much lower. So by the time you climb up to get slightly above the level of that bench, man, you're up there 50 or 60 foot. I mean, I've had stands where I had a whole set of ladder sticks and 10 screw-in steps to get up to, and you're using big branches.
Mm-hmm.
But, so it really depends. I mean, I've killed deer 8 foot off the ground where the tree, I couldn't breathe too hard or it wiggled. I've killed deer. I think cover is more important than height. I mean, my apple tree stand that I keep referring to, that stand's only about 10 or 15 foot off the ground, but it's in a cave. I mean, it's like the perfect stand because there's a cluster of 3 fir trees growing there, and I've cut out branches strategically, and I'm in a cave.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
And I'm in the shadows, so I don't have to be that high.
Right. I know a lot of guys these days are kind of doing this thing where they only hunt mornings during the rut. Do you have any mentality on that in particular?
During the rut, I mean, here, because, mountain bucks, they can move anytime. You basically, you stay on the stand all day long if you can stand it.
Mm-hmm.
It's, I usually, here especially, I like to get into my stand at least an hour before even the hint of daylight, just so I can get in there, let everything settle down, let my ozonics machine do its thing, and so I'll strap myself in and take a little nap.
Yeah.
Then you're ready.
Yeah.
Then I have a hard time sitting all day, I'll admit that. So I usually get out for about an hour and eat lunch and pee and all that stuff, and then get back in. And it's basically during the rut. The more you're in the stand, the better chance you have of killing a buck. I mean, the 2 biggest bucks I've killed here in Idaho were like between 12:30 and 1:30.
Wow.
And of course, the nastier the weather, the more you need to be up in that stand in midday. I mean, it's you never know. When. And I saw that in Kansas this year. We were sitting in stands all day long, and it was tough. I mean, we were peeing in bottles and eating our lunch on stand, and it gets really boring, but we're seeing deer at any hour of the day. Yeah.
We experienced that as well when on our Midwestern hunt last year, or just kind of almost all day movement. It's some of that is a testament to the fact that you can see so far sometimes, but it's still enough to kind of keep you in the game throughout the day,
Well, I think sometimes the deer kind of get habituated to that early morning and late evening schedule. Everyone gets out of the stand at 10 and goes and hangs out in camp until 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. And I think deer do a lot of moving in the middle of the day in fairly hard-hunted areas because everyone's in camp,
Right. Yeah, makes sense. What are you looking for generally on public land to find bucks in the daytime?
Places that aren't getting disturbed. If there's any kind of human activity, if there's any kind of disturbance, those deer are going to go nocturnal, and that's the biggest problem I have here. Because, you lived in a neighborhood where we all had 20, 40, or 80 acres. And we had 1 million does. Mm-hmm. And when I first moved there, putting out trail cameras, getting all these big bucks at night, oh man, this is great. And then 2 years later, you're like, well, dummy, those are all at night. How do you think you're going to kill those bucks?
Yeah.
So then I started going up into the big woods away from the house, getting on the four-wheeler and driving a half hour. And the amazing thing is, because you always hear about these small core areas, but I think these mountain deer, because they have to migrate out in the winter, are used to traveling farther distances. I mean, we're talking, as the crow flies, 5 to 7 miles away. Mm-hmm. I started finding that a lot of the bucks I was getting on camera at night that was coming down to breed all these does we had, I was getting 7 miles away in the daytime up in the big woods.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
So, it's just that all that activity around those houses and everyone hunting their own little property, they had made those deer completely nocturnal. So I thought, well, all the deer here are nocturnal. Found the safe spots up there in the higher mountain ridges, and they're moving all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And, the thicker, nastier places. Some of the stands, Idaho stands, you might ride a four-wheeler 20 or 30 minutes and then walk a mile uphill to get into your stand.
So, during the rut, what kind of setup do you have when those bucks are moving back and forth from thick brush to doe bedding around, neighborhood housing? Are you trying to catch them in between that, or are you just trying to get in there in the mix with them?
Well, I spent a good number of years with trail cameras trying to push bucks back. Mm-hmm. By that, I'd catch them here. I'd push the camera back 100 yards, try to catch them again, keep pushing them back. And I was getting fairly successful at getting to the edge of legal shooting hours out there a half a mile or so. But it was time-consuming. You never had enough time, especially in the rut sparked off. And what I found was more productive here was I just started hunting scrapes real hard and started making a lot of mock scrapes. And that was interesting. That's a whole subject onto itself. In a nutshell, what I have found is, because I used to take existing scrapes and I'd seed them. I'd put my dripper right on an existing scrape. It was working okay. But then one year I hit on this thing. I'm like, okay, I'm going to build my own scrape, literally screwing licking branches onto the trees in the right spot, just 10 yards away from the existing one, see what happens. It made them more nuts.
Really?
Because instead of another buck using that signboard, scrape, which is kind of a community thing, here I am, off to the side, setting up another one and kind of challenging his dominance, I think, or challenging his right to this, scrape that he had built. So it actually worked better.
Wow.
And, so I do that a lot now. I cut the branch that I want, and they're very... They key in on certain species, that's for sure. I've learned that here at Cedar and Juneberry, they call it here. You just cut a branch, appropriate size. I screw it right onto the tree with a screw gun. And actually do two. My dripper's dripping through the licking branch and the branch above that holding the dripper itself. And I've had pretty good luck keeping bucks moving into the area. But a lot of what you're doing, too, is you're kind of finding doe-rich area. And what really sparks things off is when one of those does goes into estrus. So you've got to check your cameras regularly here. You'll have a stand that's kind of ho-hum, and then all of a sudden, boom, you got 3 bucks on there for 3 or 4 days in a row, just hitting it like clockwork.
Wow.
And if you miss it, you miss it,
That's pretty neat. What are you using to open up the scrape with toss
just a stick.
Okay.
Wear surgical gloves, grab a stick from the spot, scrape it out, and toss it over your shoulder. And then, I use a lot of wildlife research product stuff that scrape and names are escaping me. The golden estrus is always good. Their scrape product is always good. Active scrape, I think they call it. And they're starting to make some sprays, too, that make it real easy, because then when I check the camera, I just walk by and give it some squirts, and you're off.
Cool.
You really don't have any other options here. You can't feed deer. You can feed deer, you just can't hunt there. But when I first moved here, I was feeding deer to kind of get intel and figure out what I had and backtracking, and game wardens were kind of getting concerned about that, so I just stopped. I was afraid they were going to get too excited and try to make a case out of something.
Right. Yep.
Because I know, everyone here feeds a deer in their backyard. There's no one here that doesn't feed their backyard deer, and they ignore that. But if you put food out in the woods, out in the public land, someone finds it and tells the game warden, and he won't leave it alone. You might as well just walk off because they're
Yeah, I understand.
They can't believe you would feed deer and not want to hunt there. Yeah.
Right.
But it is good intel, because I know that one of the Iowa outdoor writers that I know, he feeds deer very heavily before season opens. just to kind of take inventory.
Mm-hmm.
And he says he actually tells the game warden he's going to do it. And then after, like a week before the season, he abandons the site. But it allows him to inventory and kind of see what he's got going on. And here, it allowed me to do a lot of backtracking, because you'd get a buck on camera from that specific site where you knew he was going to come to because there was corn or something there. And then you could backtrack and find out where he was coming from. And that's really when I started keying in on this whole scrape thing, because I'd start backtracking these bucks. And like, oh, wow, look at that awesome scrape. And then I started finding that those big major scrapes are showing up in exactly the same place year after year after year.
Man, that's neat right there. I feel like we could go on forever and ever, and I just really appreciate all the information that you gave. What's the best way for the listeners to find more articles that you've written or connect with you in one way or another?
I'm the equipment editor at Inside Archery, so the young kids there, they kind of keep a YouTube thing going for me. So I got a lot of content there, and wanted to contact me with questions. That'd be the best way to go.
Cool.
You can see my work in deer and deer hunting. I do the bow shop column, and I got some books out there. Bow Hunting Modern now, Bow Hunter's Guide to Better Shooting, Bow Hunter's Digest 6th edition I just did, and then I have a predator and varmint shooting book coming out, the Predator and Varmint Hunter's Guide book, pretty soon, like in the next month or so.
Awesome.
And, I'm an old guy, so I don't really do the social media stuff that much. So
Yeah, that's fine. I wish that I didn't. I can tell you that. You've got it figured out. So.
Well, like I said, I let the kids at Inside Archery do it for me. So they're all little computer geniuses, so they kind of run that for me. I give them content, and they do whatever they do with it. So.
Yeah. I understand. Well, we're going to link to all of your books that are available right now, and a few articles and some of the things that we discussed during this podcast in the show notes below. So if you're listening, please just look down there and click any of the links you're interested in. Patrick, I can't tell you thanks enough. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Sure. We'll have to do it again sometime.
Oh, for sure.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. We got to get trail cameras out.
Stat. Like, we are running behind right now.
I know.
Probably not running behind, but it just feels that way.
Yeah.
I guess everybody's so hyped up about it, man. It's just, we were sitting outside on Memorial Day eating ribs with my parents, and here strolls 2-3-year-old bucks right by the place there, and one of them had about 3 inches of antler hanging out the top of his head. I was like, so ready.
Yeah, we were talking earlier, but I think that it was like June 8th or something was like some of the first like trail camera footage I can remember of Scar last year.
Yeah.
And you could, tell it was a big deer at the time, because you could see bases and some brows coming out and everything. So it's getting close, man. I mean, the thing is, you want to get them out there and let them soak. So like that's why I'm kind of antsy. I just don't. I'm not like trying to get necessarily pictures right now, but get them out there, let them soak for a little bit, and you can. Kind of like we're doing with Teenager right now, we can see, are we in the right spot to get trail camera information. That way in July we can go back and move them or whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's true. Speaking of trail cameras, you got some in the mail the other day, right?
I have had a lot of trail cameras in the mail lately. We got Exodus trail cameras, the Trek trail cameras. So I bought you one for helping me out, which I still even owe you a dinner. But then I
have those all the time, man.
every day.
Every day.
Lucky you. Some people don't. And then we both got a Trek, and then we're gonna try those out. Those look pretty awesome. I like the functionality of them so far. But I haven't really. I got one sitting out there, but it hasn't taken a video in like 3 days. So I'm about to go get some corn and see if I can make something get in front of my camera out here by my house. But then also we got 16 Muddy Pro Cam 14 trail cameras in the mail the other day.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. And man, I think they're going to be pretty good deal for us as well. So I'm excited about that. But yeah, we did. I did 2 little unboxing videos. So if you're listening, make sure you go to the link below and check out both those trail camera unboxings, just if you're interested in seeing what they look like and what options they have. I line it all out in a few minutes, and you can listen instead of read through a bunch of details on their website and kind of see what they look like and how they work. So go check those out. We hope to get basically a review done of those cameras after we get them out in the woods here for a month or so, and kind of see how they're working for us and what we like about them, what we don't, and if the sensor's picking up well and everything else. So hopefully we'll get that done. We also are approaching the month mark since we released Rock Trolls video. And that is basically when we're wanting to give away our t-shirt. So basically all you got to do is subscribe to the YouTube channel and comment on Rock Trolls. There are very few people that have actually done those 2 things, both. We've got some subscribers, we've got some commenters, but people that have done both, they're few and far between. So you stand a really good chance if you go to our Rock Trolls Black Canyon fly fishing, the salmon fly hatch, whatever, it's got all that in there. Go to that film and comment on it. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. That way you have a chance to get a shirt. Also, because we're about a month from that release, we're going to release another fly fishing film.
Another fly fishing film?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah. This one's much shorter, a little less epic, but still really cool.
Yeah. Pretty fast paced.
It is.
It's very entertaining and in a much different scene than what the Black Canyon film is for sure.
Yeah. It's a mixed bag, big time.
It's fun.
You slayed them, dude.
That was a fun little thing.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, I was beat afterwards.
Yeah, bicycles and trains and all kinds of stuff,
Dude,
man.
it was crazy.
Yeah.
Had you ever caught a pike before?
I had not caught a pike before.
So you caught your first pike?
Yeah.
So anyway, some cool stuff.
Yeah.
Coming from our TRCP event last year, Media Summit event that we went to last year, almost a year ago. Crazy to think it's been that long, but so that'll be releasing. We're going to try to do that Sunday. So when you're listening to this, it'll probably be Thursday or Friday, depending on how quickly you downloaded this podcast. And so this weekend, be looking for that. And then we've got another one coming about a month after that.
What?
Yeah.
It's like you're on schedule or something.
Oh, yeah.
That's cool.
So we're just trying to give people the opportunity to think one's cool before they see the next one. So, anyway, check those out. Anything else?
That's it.
All right, man. Well, I hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you stay cool. I know we aren't. I hope you go out and get the grill hot with some venison or something like that this weekend. And remember, this is your element.
Living it.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.